The proceeding will start.
Order, order. We start with questions for Minister for Women and Equalities, Debbie Abrahams.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with your permission, I will take questions 1 and 12 together. We will not tolerate anti-Muslim hatred in any form, and we will seek to stamp it out wherever it occurs. We are appointing an independent advisor to tackle the scourge of anti-Muslim hatred to join our independent advisor on anti-Semitism. We have a programme of tackling anti-Muslim hatred, including considering definitions. This also includes $117 million of funding to protect Muslim places of worship and faith schools until 2028.
Mr. Speaker, in spite of what the Minister says, many believe that the 2-year delay in the government coming up with a definition on Islamophobia, the only political party in the UK to have taken so long, reflects their indifference to the fear, discrimination and hatred thousands of Muslims experience. Why is it taking so long?
We do not agree with the APPG definition of Islamophobia. We believe the term that is most appropriate is anti-Muslim hatred. And let me just explain why that is the case. In this country, there is freedom of religion. There is also freedom to criticise a religion. What someone cannot do is to discriminate or hate against me because of my religion.
Blake Cunningham, not here. We go to Shadow Secretary, Lisa Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A senior Conservative who went on to become Prime Minister said Muslim women, in his words, look like letterboxes. A Conservative candidate for London Mayor said she wants to defeat her Muslim opponent to make it safer, in her words, for our Jewish community. A former Conservative Deputy Chairman said, in his words, Islamists have got control of the Mayor of London. Are these incidents of anti-Muslim hatred the kind of incidents the Minister just said will not be tolerated?
We have made it very clear that a number of these comments we just do not accept and we think that they are wrong. But let me just say that before the Right Honourable Lady throws abuse at this side, take a look at what is happening on the Labour benches. You are the only party that has been sanctioned by the EHCR for institutional racism. You have now just readmitted back to the whip the member for Middlesbrough, even though the Labour Party itself said his comments were deeply offensive. And I would also say that the honourable member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington has also had the whip suspended because of anti-Semitism.
Stolz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's important we don't trade abuse about these very serious issues. With respect, that was the tone that I adopted. I think where there are issues with political parties, rather than laughing about those issues, we should take action. That's what the Labour Party did after the HRC investigation. And sadly, the Conservatives have not acted to develop a definition of anti-Muslim hatred. We have changed, the Conservatives have not. A definition was promised and an advisor appointed to develop one 5 years ago. Perhaps the Minister is unaware of this, but today there's still no definition, no advisor, no active anti-Muslim hate crime working group, no hate crime strategy and minimal action on online hate. When is the government going to wake up to this problem?
As I have said, this government is completely committed to supporting our Muslim communities. We have said that we will appoint an independent advisor. We have made more money available to protect mosques and Muslim faith schools. I myself will be visiting my local mosque, Al-Manar, this afternoon, early evening, to attend an iftar. If you look at these benches, if you look at the composition of our front bench and how diverse it is clear that this party is committed to diversity and equality.
Gibson.
Yes, sir. With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll take questions 2 and 11 together. Our 2021 HIV Action Plan sets out actions to achieve no new HIV transmissions by 2030 in England, and to deliver this, Department for Health and Social Care is investing over £4.5 million between 2021 and 25 to deliver the HIV prevention programme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and
but stay to you.
I want to congratulate my right honourable friend for all the work done in the fight against HIV, but does my right honourable friend agree with me that in order for us to reach our commitment of zero transmissions by 2030, we need a four-pronged approach, including improved sex education, an expansion of opt-out testing, better availability of PrEP, and finding the 13,000 people with HIV who are lost to care?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and he's right in the suggestions that he makes, and that's why, because we have now, with the opt-out, have now identified 1,000 cases of undiagnosed and untreated HIV, we've expanded that further to 47 emergency rooms so that we can find even more people. And also, on the availability of PrEP, we're gathering evidence to understand why some population groups who would benefit from it are not accessing it, but this is still an important area of work for us as a government.
Mr. Speaker, since the first occurring the funding for opt-out HIV testing in very high prevalence areas as part of the HIV Action Plan I published as Public Health Minister in 2021, the scheme has far exceeded expectations, with over 4,000 people newly diagnosed with HIV, hepatitis B or hepatitis C in just 4 cities in 21 months. It has also disproportionately identified women, people of black African ethnicity and older people with these blood-borne diseases. Can my right honourable friend update the House on progress in expanding the programme to an additional 47 hospitals across England, including Derby and Nottingham, and confirm that work is now underway to ensure opt-out testing continues beyond April 2025?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I put on record my thanks to my honourable friend for the amazing work she did in the department. This has been a great success story. It is amazing that we've been able to find more cases, and that's precisely why an extra £20 million has been allocated to increase the testing. I will write to my colleagues in the Department for Health in terms of post-2025, but can I also say that there's lots of other work that we're doing with partners like the Terence Higgins Trust to make sure that we do everything we can to make this important goal a reality.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister very much for that response. Minister, in Northern Ireland we have a very proactive HIV action plan, but it's always good to share the work we do here and the work we do back home. So can the Minister indicate what discussions has the Minister had with the Department of Health in Northern Ireland in relation to extending the HIV action plan guidelines here for Northern Ireland? Exchange good things together and let's move forward.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I absolutely agree with him that the sharing of information and the sharing of best practice is always something that we should do. I will make sure that my colleagues in the Department for Health have heard his request, ensure that that is happening, because at the end of the day it's within all of our shared interests to get to this goal by 2030.
Little Richards.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for her tireless campaigning on behalf of Israeli victims of Hamas. This government is appalled by reports of sexual violence since the 7th of October in Israel and Gaza, and I'm working closely with my Cabinet colleagues on this issue. I believe it is important to continue to highlight the fact that so many hostages, both male and female, have still not been released, and the daily threat of rape, sexual assault and violence which they all face. Across government, we've been meeting with their families. Just last week, I met with the Hostage and Missing Families Forum, and I know that the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary have also done so in recent months.
Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A UN report has recently confirmed that sexual violence was used against Israeli women on the 7th of October. Last week I raised concerns with the Foreign Office that women didn't feel they could trust the UN enough to speak about their experiences. Mr. Speaker, victims of sexual violence deserve a voice and deserve to be treated with respect. So what can my right honourable friend do to encourage the international community to be united in calling out sexual violence and who seek to deny it that it happened?
I thank her for highlighting this, and she will be pleased to know that just last week, following calls from the UK, the Minister in the other place attended a UN Security Council to express deep concerns about the findings of the UN Special Representative of the Secretary-General's recent visit to the region. The UK is leading work internationally through our Preventing Sexual Violence initiative and dedicated funding totaling £60 million to prevent conflict-related sexual violence and strengthen justice and support for all survivors.
Gregory Campbell.
Number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was this Conservative government that introduced mandatory gender pay gap reporting for large employers to shine a light on the gender pay gaps that exist and to promote action to close it. As a result, the gender pay gap has fallen by approximately a quarter over the last decade.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her response, which should be able to indicate if the narrowing of the gender pay gap in the past 10 years has been less pronounced in percentage terms among women on lower incomes compared to those on larger salaries.
Well, actually, Mr. Speaker, we have seen slightly different results from our gender pay gap reporting. It is the case that in higher paid professions, the gender pay gap seems to exist, but that is because women are often in low paid work. So he's absolutely right to raise that. That's why next month we are introducing a pay rise of 10% to the lowest paid with the national living wage. And with the national insurance cut added on to the cut in January, people will be almost £900 better off in work.
Chair Select Committee, Caroline Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not just the gender pay gap, it's also the gender pension gap, it's the lack of women on boards and the importance of making sure that we have a pipeline of talented women at every level. Yesterday, I was with the community interest company Women on Boards, and their message very clearly to the Minister is please can we have more action and fewer initiatives to make sure that we make real progress in getting women at every level in our companies.
Well, we absolutely are taking action. One of the things we're planning to introduce is the pay transparency pilot, because we know that because in high-paid jobs, salaries are often not advertised, that women end up being paid less for the same role than men. It's action like that that really will make a difference to women across the country.
Joel Jones.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, in March 2023, I appointed Helen Tomlinson as the government's first menopause employment champion. We're working across government and with employers to increase awareness and develop policies to support women experiencing the impacts of menopause at work. We recently launched new guidance on the Help to Grow portal, empowering businesses to educate their organisation about menopause.
Gerald Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last July, we saw the introduction of the British Standards Institute standard on, quote, menstruation, menstrual health and menopause in the workplace. Earlier this month, the International Standards Organisation voted to develop an international version. So will the Minister join me in congratulating the BSI and also the countless grassroots organisations and individuals, including my honourable friend, the member for Swansea East, and the all-party group, who have all worked so tirelessly to ensure that menopausal women in this country are given the support that they so deserve.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome all of that work, including the member for Swansea East, who was delighted to join in a round table at Gower College. And in fact, Jane from the BSI was one of a number of women for our first menopause round table for International Women's Day at number 10. And where we celebrated the BSI and now their international achievements. And Helen Tomlinson, too, has been recognised internationally.
Question number 6, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All forms of religious hatred have absolutely no place in our communities, and we work with police and community partners to monitor and combat it. We are taking a broad approach to tackling religious hatred, engaging extensively with experts to explore how religious hatred is experienced by British communities and how it affects different faiths and individuals.
Mr. Speaker, there has been an appalling surge of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in recent months, but the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group has been suspended since March 2020, and the hate crime strategy is 4 years old when we clearly need a new one to tackle this hate crime in our communities. Will the Minister commit to restarting the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group and bringing forward a new hate crime strategy?
As I have said in answer to previous questions, we will be appointing a new advisor on anti-Muslim hatred. We are engaging with senior levels of the community, of the Muslim community. The Prime Minister and the Secretary of State from DLUC has recently met Tal Mama, which plays a very, very important role in terms of hate crime. This government is completely behind our Muslim community, and we will do absolutely the right thing for our Muslim community.
David Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome my honourable friend the Minister's comments there, and we all were behind her and endorsed what she has had to say. But can she give me some idea of what recent progress she's made on delivering the Inclusive Britain Action Plan?
I've been doing a lot, and we're announcing a report today.
Thank you, my honourable friend, for that question. We have been doing lots of work on this, and we will be releasing the report today.
And Peace spokesperson Kirsten Oswald.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to briefly pay tribute to my constituent Henry Wooga, whose funeral took place earlier today. Henry, who came to Glasgow on the Kinder Transport, was a truly remarkable man who, along with his late wife Ingrid, made an enormous contribution to Scotland and the world through their work as Holocaust educators. His legacy is truly immense, and I'm sure the House will want to join me in sending our thoughts to Henry's family. May his memory be a blessing. The increase in levels of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are eye-watering. They should be of serious concern to us all. Urgent action is needed on both fronts, and community cohesion and dialogue must be a priority. And knowing that in recent months there's been a 335% increase in Islamophobic hate cases in the UK, nonetheless, despite us just having had the International Day to Combat Islamophobia, the UK Government has not reconvened the UK Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group for more than 4 years. Now, the next anti-Muslim hatred advisor has quit over extremist threats. We need concrete answers. When will this government take tackling Islamophobia seriously?
On behalf of the government, I would like to pass on my condolences. And what I want to make very, very clear is that this government is completely committed to tackling anti-Muslim hatred. We have made that incredibly clear. We have upped the amount of money that is going for the protection of mosques and Muslim faith schools. We are about to appoint a new anti-Muslim hatred advisor. This is an effort across government. I completely agree with you that the levels both of anti-Muslim hatred and anti-Semitism that we are seeing at the moment are not acceptable, and that's why we're dealing with it.
Number 7, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the government has a programme of initiatives to support disabled people and people with health conditions to start, stay and succeed in work. This includes access to work, disability confidence and a digital information service for employers. These aim to increase inclusivity and accessibility for disabled people within the workplace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Buchan Centre for the Blind in Sedgley do amazing work. Meeting KD and Nathan, who are partially sighted employees, was an inspiring experience for me. My visit to the centre served as a strong reminder of the significant day-to-day challenges vulnerable people experience, things that able people do take for granted. What more can the Minister and her department do to help raise awareness and better support charities like the Buchan Centre and its users?
Well, I met with the Disability Charities Consortium yesterday, and some of these matters were indeed discussed. Mr. Speaker, we've invested £2 billion into improving inclusivity and accessibility at work for disabled people and people with health barriers. We have hundreds of job centres across the country and fantastic work coaches tapping into extra support through our network of disability employment advisors to assist people just like Katie and Nathan.
Speaker, adjustments are often vital for helping disabled people do their job, but Scope say disabled workers are facing many issues with the Access to Work scheme, including a long wait for an assessment, the cap cost and low awareness among disabled people. Only 40% of disabled people know about it. So, will the Minister work with her Cabinet colleagues to make sure and improve the Access to Work scheme and to prevent the disability employment gap from widening?
Hear, hear. The Access to Work scheme is a demand-led, personalised discretionary grant, but I can assure the Honourable Lady, working with employers looking around occupational health and other interventions to support people is equally important. I can assure her I met with my officials yesterday on the Access to Work scheme. I'm looking at any delays and any impacts and any changes every couple of weeks to make sure people who want to work and need this support can get it in a timely fashion.
No to topical, Elaine Saxby.
Question 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to announce today that the Independent Inclusion at Work panel have launched their report on achieving fairness and inclusion for all in the workplace. The report, part of our Inclusive Britain agenda, sets out how employers can do away with ineffective, divisive and poor quality diversity and inclusion practices. It notes that the UK employs almost twice as many diversity and inclusion workers per head than any other country. Instead, we should focus resources on interventions backed by evidence which will benefit all people, and I would like to thank the panel for their hard work and thoughtful consideration on this issue.
Elaine Saxby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My young disabled constituent Ella Wakely in Braunton goes to college, but her blue badge is only accepted on buses after 9:30 a.m, which is too late, so she has to pay for herself and her travel assistant. Can my right honourable friend let me know what steps she is taking to ensure that we improve accessibility for people like Ella who are trying to get on with their everyday lives?
As ever, my honourable friend is a great advocate for her North Devon constituents. In the National Bus Strategy, the Department for Transport committed to conducting a whole-scale review of the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme. This will include reviewing eligibility and extensions to travel times for older and disabled people.
Shadow Minister Ashley Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Minister for Women and Equalities rightly called Conservative Party donor Frank Hester's comments about the Honourable Member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington racist. It has since emerged that Mr. Hester has made comments that a group of Indian members of staff should climb on the roof like on the roof of a train, and has made reference to Asian Corner. Does the Minister agree with me that these comments are racist, yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, I understand why the Labour Party insists on bringing this issue up over and over and again, but he has apologised for his comments. We've welcomed his apology, and we are drawing a line under it because we're focused on what matters to the people of this country. I had letters last week of people telling me that we were wasting time focusing on issues that were not relevant to them. We need to focus on what matters to the British people.
Nick Fletcher.
Boys lag behind girls at every level of school, creating a gender attainment gap that's been in place for some 30 years. Will the Minister meet with head teachers and a working group to see what can we do to reduce this gap?
Mr. Speaker, I shall be happy to. We want all children to reach their full potential.
John Worrell.
Would the Secretary of State clarify when the right moment is to move on from a Tory donor calling for an MP to be shot in the context of hating all black women? Is it an apology for rudeness? Is it when £5 million more arrive in Tory coffers? Is it when she tires of explaining racism to her party? Or is it when the right honourable member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington says justice has been done?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take any lectures whatsoever from people on those benches. This is a good time to remind the House that it is only the Labour Party that was sanctioned for institutional racism by the Equality and Human Rights Commission. They continue to disappoint their members. Where is the Ford report? Why is the member for Hack Newington complaining that they haven't done anything about racism in the Labour Party? We will take no lectures from them.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite an overwhelming consultation and indeed promises from the government, caste as a protected characteristic still hangs like a thread over the Hindu community. We've now established that this could be removed by a statutory instrument. So will my right honourable friend take the opportunity to remove it once and for all before the general election?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I commend my honourable friend who's been diligently working on this important issue. It is our view that we need to do this through primary legislation, but I do recognise that this is important to so many of his constituents and others that I would be more than happy to meet with him to see whether we can discuss a way forward.
Sarah Dyke.
Speaker, Compassion in Care's helpline received 486 reports of homophobic abuse in care homes over the last 4 years. Yet 481 of the service providers accounted for in those allegations are still rated as good by the Care Quality Commission. Will the Minister work with Cabinet colleagues to end discrimination against LGBTQ residents in care homes to ensure they are safe in the care system? And would she support the development of a Pride in Care Quality Mark, an LGBTQ plus care champion scheme?
If only that was for me. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady raises a really, really important point and something that I feel really passionately about myself, and it's something that is going to increase in prevalence as we get generations becoming older because people have been more out in recent years. I have been speaking to people about this and I will continue to raise it with colleagues in departments that are relevant to this important area of work.
We now come